Okay, so do this with me. Let's go to packages. Actually, we could just Google instead Monolog Git. There you go. I'll give you the link in the chat. There you go. All right, so here is information about Monolog and some examples on the use of it. And what I need you to do, actually, I'll walk you through this. Here's what I need you to do, a couple things. Number one, Monolog is already installed because we did install it. It's here in vendor Monolog, so that step we can skip. No need to do that. Next, though, is create in here in the main directory of your project another folder called logs, L-O-G-S, logs. That's where logs will go. Okay. Now on Macintosh and Linux, you're going to have to make sure that you have the right permissions there. You have to give a W to ideally everybody on it, because your PHP scripts will be writing there, just like they were writing to TMPL cache, right? Same thing. Next is, there's a couple more things. We need to add it to gitignore. Actually, let's try this. In the gitignore that is in your project, not the one above, but rather in your project, I was checking and they said that if we say logs, /logs, then that should only apply to this one directory logs, not the directories underneath, because our vendor and others, they potentially could also have like Monolog. There probably is there could be a file called logs or a directory called logs. I don't know if there is, but there could be, right? So if we say /logs, according to what I read, this should only apply to this logs folder, this logs directory, which is exactly what we need. Okay, so to gitignore the one in your project folder, not the one above, but in your project folder, add /logs. And by the way, you must do that in your projects, the ones you're working on, right? Your team projects as well, right? All the stuff we're going to talk about right now, you must do that in your own projects as well. Well, ideally today afternoon. Okay, add all those things. You will have a recording, right? But you need to do that. So we're going to add logs here, save it, and yeah, and then let's actually plug it in. So now go to index.php, and we're going to add logs just above here. So underneath require ones, right here. Add a few empty lines there. You guys are doing this with me, right? Right now, not later. All right. So now, from here, we need to copy a few things. Copy those lines. So the use, log, right? Copy and paste right here. All right, so I'm going to make a few modifications here. So let me explain. So the use, that is only like an import in Java that allows us to use short names of classes like logger and stream handler, as opposed to writing the full name. This just makes our life here a little bit easier, right? And then it creates a global called log, which is what we're going to use to write things to the log, obviously, right? So then it creates a main object logger. The name, we're actually going to call it main. Why? Because the system allows us to have multiple logs. For example, you could say, well, here's, if you were building a bigger system, you could say, okay, here's, I'm going to have a log only for database related things. Here I'm going to have only for email related things, and here's I'm going to have only for either authentication related things. So you could actually have different logs, right, for different subsystems of your website. But there's no point doing that because our websites are way too small for that, so there's no need. Okay, so we're just going to create one log, one stream of log actually, which is going to be the main. Okay, main. So change this one to main. Now, about the logs. When you write something to a log, and you're going to see that in other platforms as well. For example, in your Android course, you probably will get to write some logs right? You're going to see that when you're writing a log message to a log, you have to give it something called severity. How severe is it? How serious is it, right? And in this case, in our monologue implementation, the severity could be, let me see if I can get the list here. No, this is not help. Oh, there we go. There's alert. There we go. You know what? If I could actually go to the definition, there we go. Beautiful. So here are my levels. Debug, info, notice, warning, error, critical, alert, emergency. That's it. The API we don't use. Okay, so these are severities, meaning what? How serious is it? The higher the number, the more severe it is, right? So for example, if I'm saying, hey, you know, user logged in, okay, maybe it's an info, right? It's kind of like information user authenticated, right? User logged out. Well, it's an info. It's not a problem. I'm logging, right? It's not an issue, right? Maybe it's an info, maybe it's a notice, something like that, right? If I'm writing information that says, here is the record of something, well, that's debug information. So I could also use it for debugging. Not my favorite way of debugging, but sometimes we want to turn this on, right? Then we have warnings and errors. Let's do errors. Well, if an SQL query failed, that's an error. Maybe even critical, yeah, maybe, yeah. But I would say it's probably an error, right? SQL error happened, right? So I write this information. You guys remember what we're displaying on the screen? We were displaying the SQL query and the error message. Well, those two pieces of information should never show up on the screen in any real application, but rather they should be written to a log. So that's the severity for, well, for this kind of a problem. Okay, right. So we're going to utilize that. I'm going to close this off. So we're going to utilize it. Now, here's an interesting thing. Here, we create a handler that will deliver the log entries to some sort of a storage. Could be a file, could be a database, could be a remote system available via API. There's a variety of options here. We're going to go with the simplest one, and that's the only one we need, which is write things to a file. Okay. And the way I want to do that is I want to write it to logs. Now, there's going to be two of them. Don't type it up yet. Okay. I'm going to write it to logs, and I have two logs actually. I'm going to have everything. Log. Now, what's the last parameter here? The logger. The last parameter here is a constant which tells, it creates kind of a filter. It tells Monolog what is the minimum severity of a log message that would be written to this file. So for example, here, if I say debug, which I will, that means that everything that is debug or more serious will be written to this file. So debug, info, notice, warning, error, critical, and so on, right? All of those will be written there. And then I'm going to create one more. I'll make a copy of this. I'm going to call it errors, because you see everything log may end up pretty big. There's going to be a lot of information in it. But sometimes when I look at my application, I only want to see what the problems are. I just want to see the errors, right? So I will create another filter, which will say, listen, write here everything that is at least an error. So if it's an error, fatal, critical, any of those, we'll write it. If it's something lower, like an info, debug, warning, we don't write it to this log. So there will be some duplication of logs. For example, everything will be written to the everything log, including errors, but to errors log, only errors will be written and above. All right, so that if I want to find out if there are any, it seems like there are any serious problems with my application, all I need to do is I need to look into my errors.log, and that will tell me. Right, it's just much easier to find out if there are some real issues, and that's pretty much it. So now I'm in post new auctions. We're gonna do an example of how to use it. Now here's the thing: log variable is global. See in here, that's a global variable. So if you remember your tutorials, if you want to access a global variable, you actually have to say global log. Like this, right? You can't do so. If I did this log and I write something like so what I have here, debug, let's say, right? And we'll say with ID. Yeah, this way, right? So if I do that, you see log is not available. There's actually an error here, right? It says undefined variable log. So technically I could do globals log, which would give me access to log global variable, but in the context of global, but in the context of anonymous function, which is what I'm using here, right? This is an anonymous function. We actually have a different way of accessing them. So instead of doing this, yeah, we're actually going to modify the heading of the function. We're going to say use or uses. Let me just check my notes here. Just a moment. Yeah, strange. Okay, so use, and then I'll say log. There we go, like this. The end effect is pretty much the same, but that is the preferred way of doing that. Okay, so please go ahead and add it to your post new action. All right, so now that we have this one, now we can use the log. Let me write it out first. So I'll say log debug, right? And then I would like to give it two pieces of information. One is the auction ID. I will write it. Now, what I don't want to be writing to logs, I do not want to be writing things like passwords. That is not something I generally want to write to a log. That would be a security risk, so don't do that, right? But other information generally, yes. So in this case, I would want to write the ID of the record that we just created. So I'll just ask for it. So that be insert ID. I will do it. And then the second thing is, it would be the client IP address, right? The way we do that is we would use, there is this super global called server. You guys haven't used this one yet. That's okay, that's why we're here. So let's do PHP server super global. By the way, what's the difference between globals and super globals? Anybody? Tell me. So guys, so globals and super globals, what's the difference? Yes, super globals are predefined in PHP, but there's only a few of them. There's actually only a few super globals. And here they are, right? These are the super globals. There is a few more constants that are defined by PHP, but they're not super globals. So for example, see file, right? Anyway, let's that's a different story. Let's not go there. But these are the super globals. So what are they? They are global variables no matter where you go, meaning if I declare my own variable, look, I have my log variable. That's a global. It was defined in global scope. If I want to use it inside of a function or a method, I must either use the use clause like this, right? Or I have to say global before I use it. Because remember, I had to write global log over here, one of the two, not both, don't do both. Okay, why? Because in PHP, we do not declare variables. The variable scope by default, if I am in a global scope, that the scope is global. But if I am in a local scope, look at this. For example, who says that error list is a local variable versus global? Well, because I did not declare it global, right? It is a local variable. See, all variables that you use inside of a function are by default variables that have scope only within that function. That's the scoping rule in PHP. Because there is no declarations, it will be hard to do something else, right? On the other hand, so you see, if there was an errorless global variable and I wanted to use it, I would have to actually say, hey, by the way, I want to use the global errorless, right? Now I would be kind of connecting that name, global errorless, to a global variable errorless. Okay, if I don't, then that is a local variable that will cease to exist at the end of the function. Okay, let's continue. So we were here writing the log message. Yeah. So we already did the use clause, which is the preferred way. So we don't need to add global. So then we say global, excuse me, log debug. That's a debug level, debug severity. So low severity because it's not really that important. New auction created, blah, 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 right? By somebody, right? And I could do the same thing, by the way, for the bid. Let's do that as well. So I could say use log, right? And I could say first row. Oh yeah, hold on, wrong one. No, that's I want this one in the post. Yeah, so in the post I'll also use log, and I'll do pretty much the same thing. I'll just borrow this chunk. Why not? So I'll say here update, right? So I'll say auction updated, auction with ID up from updated to or by whom, somebody from IP address, yeah, something like this. And this would be, what would that be? That would be my ARX ID. There we go. Okay, so I got two of them. Let's test it first, right? And yeah. So we'll do, did we have a separate one for this? Yeah, I think we had day 4. Yeah, we did have. We did have a separate. I got a typo there in admin line 3. Oh yeah, I think I didn't finish showing you how to split that, did I? Oh yeah, right. That's okay. Let's do this again. Okay, so I'll create a new auction. Third. We didn't do the image, so yeah, let's do. Yeah, that's fine. Create a new auction. All right, so I got a problem here. Argument 2 must be type of an array. Okay, just hang in there. I think I just got the syntax wrong. Just a sec. So we actually have to call sprintf ourselves. Not a problem. There we go. So I'll just add this. And here as well. So sprintf, there we go. Yeah, that should do it. So let's try this again. Reload, and there you go. Auction created successfully, right? Okay, when I did that, there is a new file there. You see logs, everything log, which looks like this. Says main log, right? Channel, debug level of severity, new auction created with ID 4 from IP address 127.0.0.1. Okay, that's what I get. Right. Okay, so that's a new auction. I created a new auction, which was the, I was actually 4th. Oh well. So name is okay, good. And then my price 150 is okay. All right, place your bid. Okay, bid placed successfully. Now let's look at the log messages and look at this. There is a new line there. It says auction 1 updated from IP 127.0.0.1. Right, so I got some logs there. Okay, so that's how that works. And I'll give you a minute or so to update your code as well. So I was just looking for how would we add, because there's 2 pieces of information I usually want. If the system has authentication, right? So we have information about the user in the session, who the user is, like the user ID, username, right? Then I want to have that information, and also the IP address. And I was thinking, how can we, include that everywhere? And I haven't tested this one, but I just found it seems like this might actually work. How old is this information? This is from 2018, so we should be okay, right? So I was just writing it, trying to adapt it, and I'm thinking this might actually work. Let me test it. So this should automatically include information about authentication. Now, the thing is, in this system for auctions, I don't actually have session of user, do I? I don't have that. But in your systems, the ones you're building, you do have user, right? I'm sure you do, right? So you have the authenticated user with a username or IP or ID at least, something like that. So I want to log that, and I want to log, there's a typo here, and I want to log, there we go. and I want to log the IP address as well. Right, so let's actually try this. Let's test it out. Hopefully, so they have this thing. So it's not monolog, but rather log, right? And I'm adding a, they call it a processor, which essentially what it does, it can inject some information into every log entry. Okay, so let's test it. I'm so curious how it's going to work out. Okay, so I'll do it again. I'll go and put another, where were we? Another auction. So we had, yeah, let's put it this one. Fine, and bid price 150, place my bid. Okay, let's see what happened with the log now. Nice, look at that. Look what I got at the end here. I got user is anonymous because I don't have authentication, and I got my IP address as well, right? Beautiful. Okay, so just got a little simplification there to our code, so we don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like with the global variables for Twig, right, where you can give it the global variable so you don't have to repeat it over and over again, right? Did we? I don't think I actually gave you an example of it, but we have a bit of code for it right about right here. There we go, right? Okay, this value will be set for all like templates. Yeah, we haven't quite used this one yet. Let me actually add that to my notes. Okay, good. So guys, you know what? I'm gonna give you the code afterwards, or actually let me give you the code right now. How about this? I'll just do a copy paste. Now let's get to the main thing that we need to do, which is handling SQL errors. So let me do this first, and I'll show you what I mean. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mess up some SQL queries. So in the index here, I'm gonna say select star, star, star. So I'm gonna mess up this query. And if I go and refresh this, there you go. Yeah, this should never be shown to the user. And also another thing is it's not using the templates, right? It's a terrible, terrible error page. I mean, it's not even an error page, it's kind of like an error dump. It's like, okay, you got it. This is the query that failed. Here is the error. And I mean, as a developer, I'm okay with that, but as a user, no way. That's just awful. So we got to fix it. Okay, so a couple of things we're going to do is first things first. So MicroDB, which is what we're using, so I'm going to go to micro.com, has a setting here. You see this one, error handlers. Okay, so there's 4 error handlers here, if I remember correctly. There is the or 4 error settings rather, right? We have the first of all, there's a switch here that tells MicroDB should it throw exceptions or should it not. Okay, so now go back to either the Java course and how we were using databases, or go back to .NET, how we're using databases there before Entity Framework. If a query failed, it would throw an exception. You guys remember that? I know it was like 3.5 years ago, but yes, it was like that, right? You run a query, it throws an exception. In MicroDB, you could also ask for it. You can switch. There's 2 modes of operation. You can switch dynamically between the 2 at will, right? You can say, I want to switch to error handling for global error handling, or I want to have exceptions which I can catch. Guys, when you look at the pre-recorded info I gave you, those lessons here, you're going to find here cart implementation, right? Here's a cart implementation. One of the things it does here, there's some Ajax here. This is a very nice one, really. So one of the things it does here is when I'm placing an order, I need to perform multiple operations. I need to perform some inserts, multiple inserts. I need to perform deletes, and it has to be a transaction. So here I'm starting a transaction. You see, I have a try. I'm starting a transaction. I'm doing an insert. But the thing is, if that insert fails, I don't want the global error handler. What I want to do, I want to catch the exception, and I want to roll back the transaction. Now, you may not have had a need to do these kind of advanced things yet before. Well, now you do. Because when you're handling a cart has multiple entries, right? For every item that's added to the cart, there's an entry. What you need to do when an order is being placed, you need to move those records as items of an order. So you have to create an order and then move those records. Now, there is no move in SQL. You need to what? Read the existing records and do an insert of the new records and then delete the old ones, right? So there's quite a few operations you need to perform. And if any of those things fail, what you need to do, you need to roll back a transaction. So the only way to do that well is to switch MicroDB. Look at this. Switch MicroDB to throwing exceptions on error as opposed to using the global handler. That's what those two lines do. Okay. And again, I refer you to the video that is pre-recorded. You guys will find the information there. Okay, so then I start the transaction. If any of those fails, this insert fails, or this insert fails, or this delete fails, right? Exception is thrown, and I will roll it back. If everything works fine, I will commit. Say, okay, now I'm done. Let's commit the transaction. Okay, so for this, I need exception handlers. So exceptions being thrown. Now, most of the time, though, because this complicates my code a lot, most of the time, though, I don't. If there is an error, stop the script, show an error message, that's it, we're done. So what I will do instead is I will leave it with the global error handler, but I will make the error handler better. You see, there is another parameter to MicroDB, which is this one, DB error handler. And what it does, it tells it about a name of a function. This is the name of a function that needs to be called when there is an error. The default function looks actually like this. Default function prints out, look at the error messages I got. Prints out the query, right? Maybe this is in the wrong order. So first prints out the query and then prints out the error. That's what I got, right? Prints out the query and then prints out the error. That's all I get. And I'm okay with that, except I don't want it to print out on the screen. I wanted to write it to a log and then what? Die? Well, yes, but I would like it to display some sort of error message to the user. Like, you know, show a nice screen saying, we're sorry, we're encountering internal error. Our team of coding ninjas is already working on it, you know, something along those lines, right? So we could do that. So let me do this first. So what I will do is I will define a new function for error handling. Oh yeah, by the way, there's actually two error handlers in MicroDB. One is for SQL errors and one is for non-SQL errors. What's the difference? Well, let's think about it for a moment. If I run a query and the query breaks, that's obviously an SQL error. But what if I attempt to connect to a database before I run the query? I try to connect to the database and the login fails, or I can't contact the server. That's not an SQL error. It's an error, granted, but it's not an SQL error. So actually, MicroDB has two separate settings for error handling. Now, the good news is we're actually going to use a single handler for both of them. I'm just going to paste the code here. Don't worry, I'll give you the code. You don't have to type it up. Okay, so I'm going to say DB, so MicroDB, right? Error handler is going to be DB error handler, and then non-SQL error handler is also going to be the same handler. I'm going to write one handler for both cases, for both SQL and non-SQL errors that have to do with the database. And then the DB error handler is, and I'm not completely happy with this implementation. That's what we did last time. What it does, it uses Monolog. But because it's not anonymous function, I cannot do the, you guys remember the use log? Yeah, I wouldn't do that one here. Okay, it doesn't work. This only works for anonymous functions. Okay, so I actually have to say global log to access this global variable. And then look what I do. First is I write an error message saying database error, and I see in parameters, this parameters is an associative array with either one or two items in it. One item that is always there is the error item. For both SQL and non-SQL errors, there's going to be an error which will describe what the problem is. Let's say I can't connect to the database. That's an error, right? And then, actually, hold on. Before we do that, let me show you what happens if you guys already saw that, right? If I mess up my connections, let's say my localhost is messed up, right? And if I try to connect to the database, hang in there, there we go, right? that is also printed out by MicroDB. But you see the SQL query part is missing. It's only the error that shows up. So there's always an error part of the parameter. This params of error is always there, but the params of query is only there for SQL queries. That makes sense. If it's not an SQL query, there cannot be info about SQL. Right? So that's why I'm checking here. Did I get the SQL query part of the parameter? If I did, log it as well, right? So you see, I log the error, and then if there is the query, I log it as well, and then I redirect. I'm not exactly happy about this implementation. Just bear with me. I will try to do better if I can. We don't have that much time today. If not, I'll try tomorrow. Okay. But I would love to make it a little bit better. But for now, I'm just going to do up get off, what I call it, internal error. Something like this. Yes, internal error. So what is that? That's a redirection, right? I'm redirecting. As I said, I don't terribly like this solution, but it will do for now, right? And I'll do, let's just borrow this. And then we'll just, what I will do here is I will render a template that will inform the user that was a problem. Okay, let's see if I can. So it would be error internal, and that's it. HTML twig. All right, let's see how that works out. I don't have the template yet. That's okay. We'll take care of that in a moment, right? But let me just run it anyway. So what will happen is that if there's an error, I'll log the problems, and I will redirect the web browser to internal error URL. Okay, let's see how that works. And if hold on a second. So let's first of all make sure it works again. So let me unmess it. So my local host should come back to the local host, and my index query should come back to the usual query. So first of all, let's make sure it still works. Refresh. There you go. It's working. It's working. Right now, let's mess it up. So I'll say ****, right? Refresh. All right. Now there is a STEM application error. That's okay, but that's because I don't have the twig. We'll take care of that in a moment. But here's the good thing that happened. Look, now I got errors log as well as everything log, and I have 2 lines more that were written both to the everything log, see, severity error, as well as a new log file called error.log or errors.log, right? Look at this. It says database query, you have an error in SQL syntax, blah, 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 right? Okay. And then the query itself. Okay. So when I see that in the log of my application, that tells me what went wrong. On the other hand, the user, let's go with the templates here. I'll create a new file. So we said error internal. Now I'm using the word error first, because I may end up having multiple templates for errors. Now I actually have error 404. I should probably rename it too. I just thought about it. You see, I should have, let's just see. I should have done error 404, right? Yeah, I should probably have done that as well. Let me actually fix it. Let's just check 404. There we go. So we've got error 404. Do I have another one? Nope. I'm okay. That's the only one I have. Okay. Right. So now what will this one do? We should, I think we should just essentially inherit from the master and then say internal error, right? Oh yeah, and there should be a, yeah, that's okay, internal error. And that should also have a code, I just thought about it, it should also have a code 500. So just like here we said, where was this piece? There we go. We created status 404. We should set status 500 for, where were we? That was, there we go, right here. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so this one should be 500. 500 means what? Internal error, right? Server messed up. Something went wrong on the server. right? It's not a normal page. It's not 200. 200 means everything's okay. 2 thumbs up, right? 300 we said are usually redirections, most of them. 400 client problem. 500 server problem. Okay, so this is definitely a server problem. So I'll render the error internal, and what will I put in here? We're sorry we encountered an internal error. Our team of coding ninjas is already working on a solution, right? Jokingly so. And click to continue. And let's just put an EMG. What do we have? Images. Let's just do a source images ninja PNG. We'll see what do we find. Yeah, let's find a ninja. We'll just do the width is 100. Let's say. Let's find a ninja. So ninja coding ninja, actually coding ninja transparent. Let's see if I can find one. This one, I think maybe transparent, maybe not. I think this one is transparent. We'll see. Yeah, I hope so. Because sometimes you end up just getting a picture with the checkered background, so you got to be careful here. It varies. Let's try this. Save image as, and let's just do. Docs, IPD23, Slim Auctions. Yeah, let's create a new folder, lowercase always, images, and we'll do Ninja PNG. Okay. We'll see if that works out okay or not. We'll find out. Okay, reload, and there you go. Yeah, and I told you, checkered background. It happens. Yeah, I hate when they do that. I know why they do it, because they want you to probably buy the thing, but it's just annoying. I'm quite sure I had a transparent somewhere. Oh, whatever. Chance Ninja. Okay. Is that a real PNG? Somehow I have my doubts. Yeah, I'll let you guys find a real one, okay, if you want to. But anyway, this is the idea, right? So now the user sees something that is user-friendly, because they have no business knowing what the error really was, right? We're sorry we encountered internal error. Our team of coding ninjas is already working on a solution. Click to continue. That's it. That's all they're gonna get, right? On the other hand, me, I get the error, right? Now, what I don't like about the solution is the redirection, because it takes me away from the original page. I don't like that. You see, it redirects me. I mean, it's not a terrible thing, but you see, the problem is if I reload, I'm just reloading the internal error. See what I mean? I'm not reloading the original page. So if I want to try again, I have to, go back. There we go. Yeah, so I'm okay with that solution. It's not perfect. Okay, all right. I'll take any questions at this point. Any questions at this point? To summarize, I expect that you will integrate this in your projects, right? You should always log, well, who's logged in currently, definitely. So by the way, this thing, you could just say user, you could call this whatever you want. You could call it whatever you guys do, CRM user or whatever that is for your particular project. It doesn't matter, right? Or you can just call it user. It's okay. The session is per domain name. It's per web browser, but because it uses cookies, it also is per domain name. So because you have a separate domain for every one of your projects, right? Whether it's the ipd23.com domain or this one, the .local, right? There is no longer a danger of overlap of session between different projects. So you can just go ahead and just use session of user for your, login, log out, and everywhere else, right? Just pick one name over here for the name of the associative array that contains the information about currently logged in user, and just stick to it. But you can just use user, and that's going to be okay too. Okay. Okay. So as I said, I expect that you will, use Monolog to create logs. You need to create this directory on your server, by the way. When you're uploading that to APD23, do not upload logs. You generally don't do that, but you want to create the logs folder. How do you do it? Well, one of the ways to do that is to use the, I have to clean up, you guys. Yeah, I'll take care of this at some point. cpanel, yeah. Right, let's get in. Come on. Oh, no, doesn't show me. Hold on a second. All right, yes, save, please. And in here, there's a file manager. So the easiest, one of the easy way to do that is you could use FileZilla too, that's fine too. Or you could just go to, to the correct directory. So I had where's my Greg auctions, right? And I can just click here to, you see plus file plus folder on the left top, right? There is new folder, and I can just create logs, lowercase, right? That's it, now I got logs. There's no need to adjust the permissions on the hosting. It's already okay. There's no need to mess with those. And then the logs will be written on the server side. There is one more thing. So, and then you will, of course, use the logs like I showed you to record certain events. Now, which events you're going to record, that's up to you. At the very least, the minimum is you must set up the arrow handler just like I gave you here. So these would be the lines, right, to add arrow handling to your code, and you must do that in your project, right? So that when SQL errors happen or database error happen, they are not shown on the screen, but rather they're written to a file. And you, of course, you're going to need the internal error URL handler and twig and so on. So you look at it after class today. Now, last thing I want to show you, which is important for safety reasons, guys. There is a problem. Let me show you what the problem is. Right now, the way the settings are is that if I go here and I say logs errors.log, look at this. This is terrible. It actually allows me to see the errors. If I know the URL, anybody can actually view my errors. That's a terrible thing for safety, right? So what we want to do, we want to deny access, okay? And the way to do that, we need to deny access from the level of web server. So PHP will still have access to the files, but the client will not, right? And the way to do that, we will use the .htaccess files, which we already have, right? And we're going to add to it. So you guys do this with me. Let's just do the logs first. We actually have to do that in a few places, but let's do the logs first. So click on logs, say new file, .htaccess, CSS. And inside of it, you're going to add, I'm going to give you those lines, those two lines. Okay. It may actually, hold on, this may actually be for, I have to check this. This may be for an old version of Apache. Hang on, I'll have to test it. Just hang on a sec. So if I do this again, forbidden. Okay, no, we're good. There you go. So you see, I'm getting forbidden. So I'm okay. Our order allow, deny from all. And I should have the same file, by the way, on my hosting. So in the hosting, I need to do the same thing. Where was I? Right here in the logs, get in, create a new file, .htaccess, right? And then, come on. Okay, this didn't quite. Oh, okay. There is a setting here. I have to tell it to show hidden files. You see those? Okay, if you go to settings on the right-hand side, you have to say show hidden files, this one. Save. There we go. So now in htaccess, I will, where's the edit? Delete edit, there we go. Edit, and I paste the same too. Save changes, and then let's, yeah, close this. Let's test that. So I have Greg auctions, I got IPD23. If I do slash logs slash, oh, I don't actually have anything in there. Hold on, I should create a file in there. Hang in there. Let's just test it. Make sure this stuff works. So if I create log, let's just check it. Okay, I should not be able to access it. So errors log. So something is not working here correctly. Hang in there. So I got my Greg auctions, logs, htaccess, errors.log. That is weird. Maybe because the errors log is empty, but that should not give me, that should not have given me the twig error, excuse me, the stem error. Yeah, guys, we're gonna, I'll have to look at it. We'll figure this out tomorrow, but so let's just finish this here. So the htaccess then needs to be, you need to copy this into logs. Also, the same file needs to be in templates. So you can copy and paste it into templates. Nobody has any business looking into our templates either. So you paste it into our templates, and you also paste it into TMPL cache. And you need to do the same thing on the server. Vendor, yeah, probably, yeah, probably. Okay, now be careful, it's the same name of the file like you have in the main directory, but the content is different. The one in the main directory, that's the content, but the one to protect the directory from accesses is a different content. Okay. All right, guys, so that's it.